Britain starts to turn out the lights. Restaurants, pubs, butchers, cafes and shops are among small businesses forced to close as soaring energy bills begin to bite.
Small firms are pleading for the government to step in over sky-high energy bills, which have soared by as much as 400% in some cases, leaving many fearing they could be put out of business by the end of the year. More than half of small companies, 54%, fear their running costs could force them to close, according to a report by SME Insights and insurer Simply Business. Businesses are not protected by energy watchdog Ofgem's price cap and they face paying 20% VAT on their energy bills, whereas most ordinary households pay 5%. The crippling energy price increases are forcing many of Britain's remaining pubs, restaurants and high street businesses, which have scraped through lockdown, to reduce their hours, and in some cases, close permanently. Butcher's shop T&P. A. Murray in Bristol, known as Murray's to its loyal regulars, closed its doors for the final time this month after 28 years at the premises, which had been occupied by a long line of butchers since the 1800s. Tom Murray, 65, had planned to leave his beloved business in the safe hands of Nathan Havens, 32, who joined Murray's as an apprentice when he was 16. But supply costs have risen drastically. The price of beef and cheese for the deli counter is up 15%, and the shop's £11,000 business rate bill is also expected to escalate. When Mr. Martin's energy supplier raised his annual bill from £7,000 to £22,000, he says it left him with no choice but to close. "It was the straw that broke the camel's back," Mr. Martin said. "We made a £30,000 profit in a good year, but those energy bills would have left us with a loss." Fears for future of Holiday Let business in Somerset. Abby McKellar, 46, is considering closing the Holiday Let business she runs with her husband Matt, 50, over winter in order to stay afloat. Little Norton Mill, which comprises 4 self-catering cottages and 4 apartments in rural Somerset, relies solely on electricity. And the couple fear they could spiral further when their fixed deal ends at the beginning of next year. Abby says, "To soak up the electricity cost alone, we would have had to increase our prices by 10% this year, and that does not even include all the other costs that are going up. If you raise those prices, people will just stop coming. It's a perfect storm." Nathan has 2 sons and the last thing I wanted was to put him in a situation where he would struggle, which could affect his family life. It feels that while there is some support for households, small businesses have just been dropped by local councils and the government, he adds. The story is far from isolated as thousands of small businesses, many of which struggled to survive through the pandemic, are on the verge of collapse due to the cost of living crisis. Last night, experts warned that the energy crisis could shut down Britain this winter, leaving high streets devoid of pubs, shops and restaurants. Lily and Stuart Beaton have also been left with no alternative but to shut up shop. The family-run Ainstey Farms shop in Greenhampton, North Yorkshire, which has a butcher, baker and deli, has served its local community for 22 years. During the pandemic, they boxed up and hand-delivered food to older people in the nearby area who weren't able to leave their homes. But when the couple's gas and electricity deal ends in September, their bills are set to more than triple, from £20,000 to £76,000 a year. Lily, 52, says, "We have no choice but to shut. Myself, my husband and my 18-year-old son Henry all work here full-time, so we have basically all lost our jobs. You watch the news and hope that somebody is going to step in and do something about the energy crisis, but nobody has. I think we've been overlooked. Most small businesses don't run on big margins. We realized we would be making a loss once we paid that first bill. We can't pass on higher costs to our local customers, many of whom are retired. People are going to have to shop at places they can afford. And Lily fears other enterprises will be forced to follow in their footsteps. At some point soon, people are going to want to treat themselves to fish and chips or want to pop to the local farm shop, and they won't be there, the mother of three adds.
Nearly 3/4 of pub landlords say they have seen their utility bills double as they urged the government to reduce VAT and business rates. Critics fear this could be the death knell for many of Britain's high streets. There were 20,200 fewer businesses between April and June this year than there were during the same period last year, the largest loss recorded by Labour researchers in 5 years. Clive Betts, Labour MP for Sheffield South East and chair of the Levelling Up Committee, says, "I think for many struggling businesses, these soaring bills could be the tipping point. Empty shops make up 20% of some high streets, and if this figure continues to multiply they will just become redundant because shoppers won't visit them." People looking to set up new businesses such as cafes and restaurants may also reconsider opening at all. Independent retail expert Claire Bailey adds, "The combination of these rising costs will inevitably prompt some small firms to reconsider if they need high street premises or whether they can do everything online instead. This will potentially lead to an increase in shops leaving the high street." There was also a sharp increase in the number of companies applying for credit between April and July this year. Research by the Federation of Small Businesses, FSB, shows. About 11.5% made a credit application compared to a record low of 9.1% in the first quarter of this year. Small businesses, which employ 16 million people among them, are particularly vulnerable to bill increases. This is because they are not protected by energy watchdog Ofgem's price cap, currently an average of £1,971 a year. Firms are also not entitled to government support, so are missing out on the £400 discount and £150 council tax rebate announced earlier this year. On top of this, many pay 20% in VAT on energy bills, whereas most ordinary households pay 5%. The FSB is now calling for the government to step in and extend the price cap to Britain's smallest firms. While some local councils offer general hardship funds for firms in financial difficulties, there is no specific help with energy bill hikes. Alan Sodhi, an FSB spokesman, says, "Small businesses are seeing astronomical and unsustainable hikes in energy bills right now. Without urgent support this is fast becoming an existential threat to some small firms, coming on top of a wider cost of doing business crisis." While domestic consumers quite rightly have at least some protection through the price cap and are being given direct cash support, there is no cap for small businesses and currently no financial support either, despite many seeing bills going up threefold, fourfold and more. In Droxford, Hampshire, pub landlord Shikar Naowell, 45, said he was left on his knees with rocketing fuel, food and alcohol bills. It led to him and his wife, Alex, 39, to take the heartbreakingly sad decision to close their much-loved The White Horse after 8 years. The quaint village pub was well loved in its local community for its unusual Indian menu served alongside traditional lagers and cozy inn decor, with a sprawling terrace garden. The closure means Mr. and Mrs. Nailwell may now have to move their two sons Rudra, 10, and Prem, 14, away from the village they have called home for the best part of a decade. The pub's energy bills have doubled and the price of a box of chicken has gone up by a whopping £25 from £30 to £55, leaving running costs completely unsustainable. The couple say Admiral Taverns, who they rented the pub from, refused to help. Mr. Nailwell said, The cost of everything is rising and we can't keep passing it on to the customers because people are already suffering. In a cost of living crisis, the first thing to go is going to the pub and going out to eat. It's not just simple numbers, it's a lot of factors. We have been trying to sustain the costs since January. We luckily made it out of lockdown thanks to our customers and help from the government. But the cost of supplies and fuel has gone up so suddenly. It's just all these small things adding up and suddenly the business is just not financially viable anymore. The worst part for us is our kids go to school here. We have brought our family up living upstairs from this pub. People travel for miles to come and eat here and they're all devastated. We're all just really upset. Mrs. Nailwell added, "We've invested so much time and effort into this place, even sacrificing our time with the kids for the sake of this pub in the community, which we love. It's so heartbreaking because we feel like we're all part of a big happy family but now we have to break up with them." A spokesperson from Admiral Taverns said, "We have 1,600 pubs across the country, and we work hard to work in partnership with all our licensees. The licensee has taken the decision to leave, and we are in the process of looking for a new licensee to take on the pub, and ensure the White Horse has a long-term, sustainable future." In South Wales, pub landlords Colin Ross and Tom Davis say they were forced to quit their beloved pub due to astronomical energy bills. The lifelong friends told Wales Online they are leaving the Hyfforddians Inn, near Crumlin, with a tear in their eye after 26 years. After narrowly making it through COVID restrictions, Mr. Ross said a ridiculously high increase in energy costs was the final nail in the coffin. He said, "Gas and electricity have more than doubled. Our contract expired at the end of July and we're on a new rate which is astronomical. Before, it was £700 monthly, which is high anyway, and it's gone up to near enough £2,000. It makes it impossible to stay here. I think something should be done about it because at the end of the day, more places are going to go out of business. It's not just businesses facing high bills, it's the customers, and they're not going to be coming out with extra money to spend on beer and food." They said they were unable to negotiate a reduction in rent with owner Admiral Taverns, despite the sharp rise in inflation. The pair's last day will be September 4th and their Facebook page has been flooded with comments from saddened customers. One said, "How sad to be reading this, you have dished up the best ever Sunday lunch and your staff are amazing." Another wrote, "Such devastating news. You have both worked so hard to build up the pub over the years, you're a credit to the trade." Elsewhere, the Hand Hotel in the village of Llanarmon, near Wrexham, North Wales, is faced with running costs that have soared from £1,900 to £9,500 per month. Owner Jonathan Greatrix says he was shocked to open his renewal quote to see the eye-watering sums for the fine dining restaurant, which is featured in the Michelin Guide. He is now calling on the government to take action, and says ensuring that his staff are well provided for is his priority. Mr. Greatrix said, "It is staggering. For many businesses these increases are not survivable. The increase in costs would see us paying 4 times our monthly mortgage for energy. Without action and support we will have to look at options like closing a couple of days a week or shorter opening hours. As with the COVID pandemic our first concern is the staff we have here. We feel that responsibility and will always put staff first." Mr. Greatrix says businesses are set to suffer with the surge in power bills, and warns jobs across the country will be at risk. He said, "We have this moribund government playing a second-rate game of The Apprentice and we can't wait until the September 5th, when the winner will be announced, for action on this. There is also the obsession with the household cap and it is horrendous and invidious that families will be in the situation of choosing between eating and heating. but they have totally missed the effects on businesses. This will affect the very fabric of society once food shops and petrol stations start to close, as they inevitably will without intervention. And how are households going to manage their bills if people are losing their jobs? We can't just blame this on Russia. Energy companies are making billions of pounds of extra profits this year. This is not a luxury item, and they have a moral responsibility to do more to help.
The Han's financial woes are a sad turnout for a restaurant which has been praised for offering destination dining at its best in a review this month by Mail on Sunday. Reviewer Simon Heppenstall praised the Han's head chef, Greg Mulholland, who has 2 AA rosettes for culinary excellence and has led its fine dining over the past 18 years. In Rotherham, South Yorkshire, couple Damien and Maxine Bailey closed their tattoo parlour Bailey's Body Art after 16 years, saying they could no longer manage the rising costs. Mrs. Bailey told Mail Online they were devastated at its loss. She said, "We gave our blood, sweat and tears, sometimes starved and went without anything good to keep it afloat, and now it has gone. What a waste of our lives. We have children we hope to pass it on to. I worked in lockdown for this country, and for what? We never had any financial assistance." In a parting message, Mr. Bailey posted that their hearts were broken and they gave it all they had over 16 years. In Edinburgh, much-loved pub Monty's in the popular Haymarket says it is being forced to shut down after the double whammy of the pandemic and the rising cost in bills. The pub, which opened to much fanfare in 2016, has not announced a closure date yet, said it would continue to serve while supplies last. The pub made the announcement to customers on Instagram this month. They posted, "After almost 6 years of building up our wee business, serving some of the best beers in town, amazing selection of whiskies and local spirits, and some amazing products, I have to announce that Monty's will be closing at the end of the month. Unfortunately, the higher end, the pandemic, cost of living, rising costs of everything, it doesn't work in our favor. I have tried to fight for a rent reduction. Unfortunately, our landlords would like someone in with a more commercial offering." Andrew Goodacre, chief executive of the British Independent Retailers Association, says scores of firms have been struggling since late last year. He predicts many will try to stay open over Christmas, hoping for increased sales, but that the crunch point will come in the new year. And with households having to tighten their own purse strings, he fears a bleak winter ahead. That's when the cash flow is normally under pressure, and it could be the tipping point for many. "We should have had this debate 9 months ago. The warning signs were there," Mr. Goodacre adds. Tarun Jadumal, general manager of wholesale marketplace Anchor Store, said, "Tomorrow marks the announcement of a new energy price cap for consumers. However, it's remarkable that no such cap exists to protect Britain's independent retailers and small businesses." With the traditional renewal date of October 1 for fixed-price energy contracts looming, 92% of British independent retailers have stated that their local high street is already struggling, with 3/4, 74%, believing that an upcoming recession will provide the largest threat to their survival, almost double the threat posed by COVID. Simply put, time is running out for the government to step up and protect retailers. "We urge the government to introduce a price cap for British SMEs, including independent retailers and brands, as well as supporting BCC's proposal for a temporary cut in VAT to 5% to reduce energy costs for businesses." Nearly 7 in 10 firms now expect their energy bills to rise in the next 3 months, with almost a third predicting increases of more than 30%, according to research by the Confederation of British Industry. Matthew Fell, chief policy director at the lobby group, says, "The guiding principles for any intervention must be to act at speed, and to target help at those households and firms that need it most." Tory leadership frontrunner Liz Truss has hinted she may help smaller companies but would not reach first for the handout. In an interview with The Sun on Sunday she said, "I'm very, very aware that it's not just customers, or consumers, that are facing energy price problems, it's small businesses. But along with rocketing energy bills, small businesses are also facing increased costs in supply chains with the hike in food and fuel costs, and many are juggling debt repayments after signing up for bounce-back loans during the pandemic." Independent retailers were given 100% relief on business rates in 2020, to help them through the pandemic. But this relief was slashed to 66% in July 2021, and then to 50% in April this year. Meanwhile, most Scottish firms are now back to paying full business rates unless they are eligible for Scotland's small business bonus scheme. And rates are set to surge even higher next year, as increases are pegged against next month's Consumer Price Index inflation figure, which is predicted to hit 13.3%. Real estate advisory firm Altus Group estimates that even at 11%, it would add £3 billion to businesses' tax bills in England, the single biggest jump in the space of a year since the tax was introduced in 1990. Val Burrows, 64, who runs a laundrette in East Grinstead, West Sussex, saw her energy bills rise by 173% when her fixed offer ended in July. And unlike other high street businesses, she says she cannot cut back on energy usage. Miss Burrows, who lives in nearby Lindfield, thinks that the government should impose a blanket energy cap for businesses, and that there should be emergency funds available like those given out during the pandemic. As a sole trader, she says she has to continue until her lease ends next year. "But then I may have to consider shutting up shop if I don't get financial help," she says.